I'm excited for this project, so let's not waste any time and dive right into the monthly build for November 2018. Got one of these and need to know how to cool it? Check out Enermax's all-new LickTech TR42 series of coolers, featuring a full-cover copper baseplate, rubber vibration dampening radiator pads, and an all-new block top design with addressable RGBs. The LickTech is designed specifically for the new Threadripper 2 series of CPUs and comes in both 240 and 360mm flavors. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. There are a couple of reasons that I'm excited to put this all together for you. But first, I want to make sure that you guys know about the huge giveaway that I'm doing along with Pulse Hardware and Bitwit. If you don't know about it, go check out the link in the video description and watch the announcement video that I posted the other day. So to kick this off, we're going to be building in the excellent NZXT H200i. This is the black and blue model, and when I reviewed this case when it first came out a few months ago, I was impressed with how compact it was, while still allowing for a full suite of high-end hardware and decent airflow. Mini-ITX builds are always really interesting to me, and I'm repeatedly tempted to make one my daily driver just to completely switch up the way my desk looks that normally has a large ATX tower on it. Now, initially I was planning on using the NZXT Kraken X62 in here because I was just kind of on autopilot and assumed it would fit. Unfortunately, while front fan support includes two 140s, the additional height created by the inlet and outlet ports on a radiator mean that AIOs of this size simply won't work. I also had another snafu, as this build originally was going to be using a mid-range Ryzen-based system with this MSI motherboard, and likely an RX 590, which would have been pretty cool. However, there were a few very specific parts that I wanted to use in that build that unfortunately haven't arrived yet for one reason or another, so we'll postpone that one until a later time. If you want to see something like that, make sure that you vote on Twitter for the upcoming Viewer's Choice PC, which I do every year in December. So even though I had my case locked in, I had to take a couple of last-minute detours. But thankfully, I had other hardware in the office that I really wanted to try out. That includes this brand new Zotac RTX 2070 Mini. With the 10 series, Zotac started to get really creative with small form factor graphics cards, and they continued that tradition here, cramming a huge Turing die and 8 gigs of GDDR6 memory onto a petite PCB that still takes advantage of a dual fan cooling solution. Not only that, but you get a cool looking backplate that curves up around the edges of the card, a lower rated power consumption than the Founders Edition, and of course, RGBs. Yes, this 2070 does run at reference clock speeds, so we may be down a small performance notch from something like the enormous EVGA RTX 2070 XC Ultra, but that's not to say that we won't still be able to blaze through some games. And what better processor to enable that high frame rate gaming than one of Intel's new 9th gen parts, the i7-9700K. In a video I did a couple of weeks ago, I asked the question, who is the 97K actually for, given its odd lack of hyperthreading and 8 cores? Well, to be honest, it might be exactly for this purpose. A smaller form factor system like this one that can't run a 360mm radiator to support something like a 9900K, but where the user still wants 8 cores, high clock speeds, and the best IPC out there. A 240mm radiator should be able to keep the 9700K in check, so that's what we'll be using in lieu of the Kraken X62. This is the Enermax LickFusion 240, and it'll slot in nicely into the front radiator mount of our H200i. We'll be keeping continuity with the TB RGB fans that come with the LickFusion by installing some additional fans of the same type throughout the system in the back and on the top. The TB RGB fans look great, they run really quiet, they have decent static pressure, and I think it's going to make our system really pop. We'll be mounting all of this hardware to the Gigabyte Z390i Aorus Pro Wi-Fi. I made a big stink a couple years ago on Twitter about the complete lack of color-neutral Mini-ITX motherboards on the market, but since then companies like Asus and Gigabyte have stepped their game way up, and not only are there multiple high-end options now, but they are fully featured, look great, and have really good overclocking support to boot. The Z390i also features things that most full-size boards lack, like dual BIOS support, a front panel USB 3.1 header, both 12-volt and 5-volt RGB headers, and a 6-phase VRM. We'll be sticking with Gigabyte for memory as well, although we won't be able to take advantage of one of the main selling points of their Aorus DDR4 kit, which is that it comes with a set of dummy sticks that allow you to populate all 4 DIMM slots on a traditional ATX motherboard, even though there are only 2 active memory modules. This is entirely for aesthetics, however, so the fact that our system only has 2 memory slots won't hinder performance at all. For storage, I'll be using one of Team Group's Delta addressable RGB 2.5-inch SSDs. This is the 500GB model, but you can get them in capacities up to 1TB if you need the extra room. In fact, I picked up the white 1TB version on a Black Friday sale, and I'll probably be using it in a system soon. I hope it'll look good mounted to the top of the PSU shroud that will otherwise be covering up Cooler Master's new MWE Gold 650 power supply. This is a budget-oriented, fully modular 650-watt, 80+ gold rated unit with all black flat cabling that you could pick up for about $80 and should provide all the power most system builders need, including us right now. So now that we've touched on all the parts, let's cross our fingers and start plugging some things in.
Reboot, I'm cold red, my service automated, like data running through my veins. Got you distracted, subconscious overloaded, careful don't pull the cord on me. No time to stay around, keep walking till you get out of my face. Regrets, restricted access, I'm just a flight to get up here. We love discharging, I can't waste my time with someone slowing me down, 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 down. So high, I'm floating, I'm shining in my prime. Start rolling over, cause you can't take my crown. I'll always be 10 feet off the ground. My crown. I'll always be 10 feet off the ground. Can't take my crown. Can't take my crown. Can't take my crown. Rewind my circuits, but you don't get that courage, cause you can handle my game. No, my drive's a puzzle.
Take me in your arms, do just what you want. You're the one I trust. I belong to you, and I'll always be around when I need some loving, baby. And I never let you down, let you down, let you down. I'm your song, and you're playing all my melodies. There's no one else, cause baby we got chemistry. You give me feelings that I never knew. This heart of mine will always and forever belong to you. You and me were meant to be as one. The universe has known it all along. Maybe this is where our story starts. Maybe it was written in the stars, written in the stars. You, me, forever, yeah. You, me, written in the stars. You, me, forever, yeah. You, me. Take me to
I decided to go all in on blue for this build, eschewing the rainbow RGB effect that basically all of our components can spit out. I think this worked out really well, and I left a couple of small things inside the case white to help balance it out so this whole thing doesn't just look like a big blue blob. Building in the H200i was a similarly satisfying experience to working in the other current gen NZXT chassis, and I didn't run into any issues of note. Of course, cable managing inside of a small space like this is always a challenge, but as long as you don't try to cram a 200mm 1600 watt power supply down here, there is plenty of room under the shroud to stuff excess wiring. The Cooler Master MWE Gold 650 fit the bill just perfectly, and the modularity of the unit meant that we weren't dealing with too many stray cables. I decided to flip the front fans on the radiator, which would normally be configured as intake, to balance out the air pressure. The way I did it was just purely as exhaust, and it was done exclusively for aesthetic purposes, but I discovered a small issue as a result. Because of how the GPU sits in the case, with the fans basically pressed up against the PSU shroud, it's imperative that fresh air be introduced somehow, or else the GPU can get pretty choked off. I was still able to fairly easily boost up the Zotac 2070 Mini plus 100 MHz on the core and plus 950 MHz on the memory, but this resulted in temps hovering around the 83 or 84C range while gaming. Temperatures like this are still stable, although not ideal, and we'd rather see a 7 as our first digit if possible. Luckily, I did do a quick experiment where I flipped the front fans around to act as intake, as they should, and this lopped a full 5 degrees C off of our temps. So if you plan on replicating a system like this, just be sure that you're aiming some intake air directly at your GPU if this is an option for you. The 9700K was definitely receiving adequate cooling from the Enermax Liquid Fusion cooler, as low temperatures never exceeded 75C, and were mostly in the low 70s even at 100%. This is perfectly acceptable and also leaves headroom for overclocking if that was something that you wanted to explore. The testing and benchmarking results indicate that our build performs better than a similarly equipped system with a GTX 1080, even if we are slightly behind the results of some of the larger overclocked versions of the RTX 2070. The 9700K also performs admirably, putting up an impressive real bench system score and never limiting our gaming potential. So November's build is a wrap. I hope you enjoyed seeing this blue beast in action. Don't forget to check out my upcoming Twitter polls for your chance to vote on what I build in December. Also, feel free to stop down at the merchandise store linked in the video description for some BPS Customs swag. Get subscribed to the channel if you're not already, and as always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.